Well, good morning, everyone. It is the morning after the third GOP presidential debate last night, and we are here to break it down for you for social conservatives. I'm Autumn Leva with the SoCon Report, and we're so glad you've joined us. This morning, I have joining me to break it all down for you all is our CEO, Craig DeRoche, and then Jason McGuire from our allied organization, the State Family Policy Council in New York. So Jason, Craig, thank you so much for joining us. Jason, I'm going to kick it off to you right away because you actually joined Craig and I for breaking down the first GOP presidential debate now, a couple months ago. What do you think? What were the differences between the first debate and now the third debate?
Yeah, well, thanks, Autumn. It's good to be back with you on the SoCon Report. I have to tell you that the biggest difference for me was I think we are moving to more substantive debates. The fewer bodies on the stage and the longer response times for the candidates is allowing us to hear more of where the candidates stand on the issues. So I think that was encouraging. It was helpful to be able to hear more from them and just to have fewer bodies on the stage. And I think by the time we get to maybe a fourth, fifth, sixth debate, who knows what's going to happen, we'll whittle it down even further and be able to know exactly where these candidates stand.
I agree with that completely. Craig, what was your take on the differences between debate one and now debate three?
Yeah, I agree with Jason. I was taken by it, actually. I know a lot of people are dismissive. Oh, this is never going to matter, and not everybody's there. But you know what? You start talking about moving America with 330 million lives from a culture of death for 50 years to a culture of life. You can't just shout a platitude on a TV show and expect that American culture has been transformed and the generations that have been raised surrounded by a culture of death will have a different worldview. So, there's a lot of work to be done. And I think the candidates, sober-minded, there were three of them on the stage, two in particular, I think that recognize the moment that America's in as we go from one generation to the next of leadership, that this isn't just platitudes. This is actually a very serious hill to climb. And they're at least putting forth their vision for how they would lead us in climbing that hill.
Oh, that's right. Thank you, Craig. Well, I want to talk about the moderators for a little bit because the moderators to me last night seemed a little bit different. I feel like they had a lot more control over the candidates. Things were a little less crazy. What do you both think?
Yeah, I'll come in front of you on this one, Jason, because I think it's good. By the way, my read on the Bible, Autumn, is that we're supposed to go and make disciples of people that aren't disciples yet. It doesn't say once you found a group of Christians, stay in a cave with them and live out your years repeating the same things. And so I think it was good that it was at NBC. I think it was good to hear because I think a lot of Americans don't know the lingo that's going on in say, mega-centric TV and news, the same as they don't know what's going on with this transgender, cisgender, are you this or that? I don't even know. And we work on those issues. I can't keep up with the change of the language from week to week that both conservatives and liberals are trying to pull off too. So sometimes when you go on to one of these networks that we all make fun of because they aren't for anything. They don't stand for anything. They're just kind of a marshmallow. Sometimes they have good comedies like Friends or Seinfeld. But it's really important that you go on those because there's a huge swath of America that wants to not be burdened with governance of America. They want that to be done for them. And it's important to speak to those families as well. So I think it was a good call last night.
Yeah, I'll agree with everything that Craig just said, but I'll also add a couple of thoughts. I think it came across very quickly from Lester Holt that Lester saw himself as not wanting to get caught in the trap of some of the previous moderators where things got out of hand. I think NBC viewed themselves as kind of the adults in the debate room. Now, we may debate that fact, but I think they viewed themselves in that sense. That's what made it so difficult when Vivek Ramaswamy came out the way he did in attacking the moderators. I took that as very disrespectful action. I know for a certain segment of the primary Republican primary voters, they're probably going to like the attack mode. But I just didn't think that was going to be helpful for him with many independent voters that were tuning into this NBC debate.
I had the same reaction, Jason. I thought, oh, that's an interesting tactic to come out of the gate and go after essentially the hand that feeds you in this debate, attacking the media. It didn't play well for me either. I thought it was just a harsh tactic. But I noticed the same thing as you, Jason, that the audience seemed to enjoy that, at least a segment of it. Speaking of Vivek Ramaswamy, actually, let's talk about him and his attacks on Nikki Haley. Actually, I think Nikki Haley was probably the most attacked candidate by the others on the stage last night, including over Donald Trump himself. And then, of course, Vivek went after Nikki Haley's daughter for using TikTok. And of course, on the stage as they were debating TikTok and whether to ban TikTok and all of that, Vivek is the only candidate who's actually on TikTok and using it, as far as I know. Jason, maybe I'll go back to you first, and then Craig. What was your take on that? Was it fair for Vivek to go after Nikki Haley's daughter? And why do you think the candidates were so intent on attacking Nikki Haley herself last night?
Well, I think you can always
go, Jason.
I think you can always tell which candidate is surging based upon who's sustaining the attacks. And Nikki Haley certainly took some fire last night, as she is surging. I think she is now gaining ground in the polls. Mr. DeSantis has lost a few points, but is still neck and neck with Nikki Haley. And so I think they both took some attacks yesterday. And I think you saw from Vivek where he had moved his position from previously attacking Ron DeSantis, though there was still some of that. He really began to train his sights on Nikki Haley. When Vivek came after Nikki Haley's daughter, I think that was just a tragic mistake for him for a lot of reasons. One, I think he lost a lot of the mama bear vote right there. When mom saw that the family was being brought into this, that the daughter was being dragged into this debate, I don't think that pulled well at all. And I'm talking independent voters, Republicans and Democrats. The mamas just didn't like that kind of an attack. And frankly, Nikki's daughter is a grown adult. And so she's making these choices in her own right. So whether she's on TikTok or not seemed to be an irrelevant point for Vivek to be making.
That's right. Yeah, she's 25 years old, and I noticed a lot of booing, especially from female voices in the audience live. So I think you're right, Jason. Craig, what about you? Why was Nikki Haley so targeted?
Well, yeah, exactly. She gave the best in the last election, so you're going to get some, right? And I don't think she even preps for that. I think it's a briar patch that she doesn't mind living in. She's particularly comfortable with it. Look, she's smart. She's witty. She has a wonderful communication style, and she can handle that. And folks, that's what happens when you're the governor of South Carolina. That's what happens when you're a diplomat at this stage of being an ambassador to the UN. And so I think it highlighted her very well. Vivek, what he was going through, and really what he's going through in representing, I think is important. I think a lot of people thought that, if you have presidents, the last two that had really no experience in leading political organizations or governments that America elected before Joe Biden, then that's wide open for everybody. That, you don't need no experience necessary to apply. And this is one where I think it shows that if you think you're ready to be the president of the United States and you don't know that it's inappropriate to attack a woman's daughter who's in her early or mid 20s in America right now, then I don't know. I mean, I would have a very difficult time voting for somebody for mayor or to be on my city council or even my planning commission if they didn't understand how to respect a family's rights with that type of statement. So, yeah, I'm not sure. I think he made an impact maybe in the spring by bringing some ideas into the debate. But I think that Vivek's contribution to the discussion is kind of passed by is my observation last night. Just speaking the truth to you, Autumn.
Yeah, I think that when Vivek came in, if I can add one more point to that, when Vivek came into the beginning of the campaign, I mean, he was cutting through, like a hot knife through butter. I mean, he was really gaining ground. A lot of people liked him. But I think we're beginning to see why we have campaigns as they go on. Candidates will rise and they will fall. And can they sustain the length of the campaign, the hits of the campaign? And so if Vivek came in cutting like a knife through butter, he's starting to look a little more like curdled milk by this point. And it just came across very crass. I don't think he did himself any favors last night.
I think that's right, Craig and Jason both. Although I do think that Vivek did get under Nikki Haley's skin a little bit, and she kind of let him rattle her a little bit, even though I generally agree with you, Craig, just top-notch communication style from her. And it's, foreign policy, of course, is her sweet spot with her post in the Trump administration and everything. I think the candidates felt like because the debate was so focused on foreign policy, they had to go after her a little bit to show their own chops. But I wonder, with how he got under her skin, with how he was really not presenting well in attacking her daughter. My question is, was there in your mind an overall winner or loser in the debate last night? And I've got a two-part question for you both, so brace yourselves. Do you think that any of the candidates disqualified themselves in the eyes of social conservatives, those watching on our show, those beyond, because of their positions that they stated on abortion?
Who's starting this one, Autumn?
You think it's you, Craig? You just volunteered.
Okay, I'm going to jump in then. Hey, listen, I do think somebody clearly won the debate, and it's not going to, you may not like this. For those of you at home that are expecting me to go with the one that gave or the best punch, and I guess you asked me about a little bit about that. What I think what Ambassador Haley said, this is just scum or whatever she said. I will confess, we have a coffee mug here in the DeRoche household that says the following: I love Jesus, but I cuss a little sometimes, because as Christians, we're all sinners. We come up short. And I just think it showed humanness. And I would expect that if you're going to hold the position of governor or ambassador or president, you might get frustrated at different intervals. So, but I enjoyed the view. And I think that helped sustain her in an excellent performance. But to me, clearly, very clearly, Ron DeSantis won the debate. And here's why. This is about running the country, the leader of the free world. We are $32 trillion in debt. And folks, we've just tripped the wire where our interest is at compounding at more than $1 trillion a year, which means we will have to spend $1 trillion to foreign banks and Chinese and manufacturing all over the world before we feed our kids, before we educate them, before we pay for our defense in 2024. $1 trillion from the orgy and the gluttonous overrun of the last 15, 20 years. And America is going to look not right now for change, like Obama said, or radical, crumple it up and throw it out the window. They're going to be looking for, I would like to be able to function. I would like to be able to have an honest platform underneath my feet that I can build, this shining city on the hill again with. And that doesn't have to be the whole country. It starts with our own home on the hill. And that's what's been lost. I think that we're seeing the leadership of a very selfish age group going through. Bill Clinton and Joe Biden and Donald Trump are all, within 3 years of each other in age. And the voters there have been primarily concerned about what's in it for us. And we've seen that going back to, call it the mid 90s. Now we're seeing an electorate emerging that is more interested in their future than in their moment. They're more interested in their families. They're seeing the big projects that failed of government, like the education system. People are starting to talk again about the entitlements, the Medicare, the retirement, and they're starting to see that it's going to take some sober leadership. And I think that Ron DeSantis really showed the type of just stable leadership that others have shown in that moment, that they're the one that can get through it. So it's not a sexy win for him, but clearly the most presidential. He had very crisp answers. But I do think that Tim Scott continues to show that he's competent to be president. And it's just maddening to people why he's not finding his voice in this particular forum. But the clearest two that showed they're breaking away are DeSantis and Haley. And I give the nod to DeSantis as being the one that is demonstrating he's ready to lead.
Well, I'm not going to reveal my answer yet. Jason, I'll let you go next.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Craig said. In fact, when this debate started, and even this conversation this morning, we've spent a lot of time talking about Nikki Haley because, there was a lot of foreign policy in this debate, and so she had an opportunity to shine. But let's remember that this debate was occurring about 24 hours after polls closed on Election Day. And frankly, in a lot of places, it was not a good night for Republicans. And so there's a lot of licking of wounds of Republican candidates and Republican parties around this country. So in that context, to have Ron DeSantis come to the podium, and when he's faced with the question, why not Trump? His answer was, because I'm tired of losing and I want to win. I think that resonates with a lot of voters that are out there. And I think it really played to the strengths of Ron DeSantis, pointing to the record that he has had and highlighting the fact that it's time that we win again. No one likes to be losing these elections. And to have a candidate who just is owning that space, seemed to be steady, with a steady hand on the wheel. I think that man was Ron DeSantis. I'll agree with Craig, too, that it didn't seem like he had anything that made a real breakout kind of moment last night. I think it was kind of neck and neck between Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis, but I'm going to give the edge to Mr. DeSantis because of that winning mantra that he spoke of many times, that I think voters are saying that's the kind of thing I want in a candidate for president.
Well, that's so funny. I think for our viewers watching, well, I'll just share. We did not plan this. We actually did not talk about this ahead of time. Maybe we should have done a better job prepping, gentlemen. But for our viewers, we didn't talk about this. But all three of us seem to agree that DeSantis was the winner, especially for social conservatives last night. I agree. I think he did such a great job of highlighting his record and things that he's gotten done, including on foreign policy, which I agree is Nikki Haley's sweet spot. So I think he was the overall winner. I'll agree with you both. But Jason, I want to go back to something you just said, and I'm so glad you said it, talking about we're just on the coming off the edge of this election. And I think you're right. We have to acknowledge it did not go well for social conservatives and for the pro-life movement in particular. There was the big abortion loss in Ohio, where now abortion up to the moment of birth, including for young girls, minors, probably without parental consent. No limitations is now enshrined in the Ohio Constitution. Our allies there saying it goes further than Roe versus Wade did. So I think the question for you both is, and Jason, since you brought it up, maybe I'll start with you first. What should the takeaway for these remaining presidential candidates be on the abortion issue for them and for social conservatives generally? And what should we be saying about abortion right now?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because I'm still not hearing what I want to hear from many of the candidates. I'm thinking of the debate the other night and thinking of Governor Chris Christie. He seemed almost dismissive of the fact that that we'd be wanting to continue this fight, and that was troublesome to me. You did hear some statements from Nikki Haley, in which it may play well with some independent voters. It may play well with some women voters when she talks about the fact she's not going to judge someone else for the action they make. But for social conservatives, for a lot of primary voters, for people like myself, I'm not interested in judging in that context. But I also am not going to dismiss it as these are equal actions. We need to be talking partly about changing laws, but I want to move away from the language regarding the word ban and move from law to love. How can we, as social conservatives, how can Republican candidates that are looking to articulate this message begin to talk about affirming a life-affirming culture, building a life-affirming culture? We're so busy talking about bans when we ought to be talking about adoption and helping young moms that are facing high cost of living right now, being able to survive and to feel that they can carry that child to term. And I think if each of these candidates could wrap their arms around those ideas and begin to build a culture of life and help us to understand there is a positive way forward, we'll begin to move the needle on the culture, and it will be much easier to talk about this issue. But as long as we are locked solely on the issue of law and solely in the conversation of bans, then we're going to lose this debate. We have to talk about affirming a culture of life.
That's right, Jason. What about you, Craig? What should these candidates be saying about life, and what's the takeaway for social conservatives?
I think the devil has America by the throat right now. I really do. I think that the devil, the evil one, has been toying with America ever since Thomas Jefferson wrote the words that everyone is created equal. Remember when Speaker Johnson was being sworn in, he said that they chose the word created, that we're not born equal. We're created equal from that moment forward. And that sent chills through Hades. That could not stand. And that's what we've been at war with ever since with this American idea. And we treated African Americans as less than human. We treated women as less than human for decades and decades. We treated people that had yet to be born, and we continue to. as less than human. And people that want power and statues and libraries named after them don't care. Those are numbers on a spreadsheet, the same as the votes that showed whether or not they won the election. And folks, that is as disgusting as any other country that has exterminated their population. Russia, China, Vietnam, and Pol Pot, you name it, going through genocide and everything else. And it is difficult. We do want somebody closer to our values to win. We want to be able to articulate that, folks. But this is a spiritual battle first. It becomes a battle for the hearts and the minds. And America is a threat to the evil one on this planet. And that is why he's delighting so much in tearing apart the American dream that we used to share. We'd fight over other things on how we're going to pay for the roads or what business regulations would be. But folks, this fight is actually about the American idea itself and whether or not we are created and our rights come from God, or whether or not life itself is determined by a committee, nameless, faceless government bureaucrats. So we're not going to shrink from this. I heard some candidates shrinking from it last night. Autumn, to answer your question directly, I do not believe that was Ron DeSantis, and I do not believe that was Nikki Haley, although her words might confuse some people. I know her personally to know she would never shrink from that fight. And I know that Tim Scott is all the way there. But I do think we need to give these folks grace. They need to remind people when we ask them, the civil rights movement in the 60s, people would come to them and say, this is about wages for the garbage truck workers, fair wages and fair work hours, right? What did this sign say on their chests? It didn't say fair wages. It said, I'm a man. I'm a man. I'm a person. That's the fight we're having. And so people that want to jump right past this to, well, let's rank people. That's what Chris Christie did that bothered me. Can we all agree on a ranking for these people last night? No, we're not there yet. And I think Ron DeSantis said, we're better off when everybody counts. We're better off when everybody counts. And I know we got some work to do, Autumn. I don't have the answer today, but I'd like to see us at least be fighting out of the right corner. And I think Christie and Vivek might have given some ground last night on that to the other side, and that bothered me.
That's right. I think best overall of capturing where we need to be at on the issue was Ron DeSantis, because of what you said, Craig, where he came out very clearly and said it is best when everyone counts and everyone matters. And I think we did hear a little bit from some of the candidates where they were making comments about how the babies in New York and Illinois, the lives in the womb in New York and Illinois, they should matter. And Jason, this is your state. They should matter just as much as the babies in Alabama and Mississippi, where the states have chosen to protect life. And I think that's a much, much stronger position to be coming from, and frankly, a more hopeful one. But I agree, Craig. I think Governor Christie did not shine on that. I think saying, this is just state by state, that's all we've ever wanted and argued for, that's not correct. The pro-life movement has never said that life is just determined state by state. The main point of overturning Roe versus Wade was just saying that the Supreme Court got it wrong. That was inventing a right to abortion in the Constitution was a bad ruling. But it was never that the people's representatives in D.C., in our House and Senate, shouldn't be able to say that every life matters. And I think that's a much stronger position and like I said, a more hopeful one. But I do want to turn to, because we've all talked about it a little bit, we've been dancing around it. Foreign policy was for sure the far and away main issue from the debate last night. I think we've all been watching with horror as the events have unfolded in the Middle East, and now anti-Semitism on the rise in the United States of America. Jason, which candidate do you think really shone on that issue, or was it a mix?
Well, I think there were three words that were resonating with me last night, even today, and that's the words stone cold dead. You heard that phrase used by Ron DeSantis in reference to not the fentanyl issue that is occurring here and going after cartels and such, but also, you heard foreign policy come up in regards to, you mentioned Israel and Ukraine and other areas. And I think he really excelled in that area, as did Nikki Haley. I mean, obviously, this is her area of expertise as well. So those are my two winners on foreign policy. My loser in the issue was Vivek Ramaswamy again, because really the isolationist policies that he was advocating for, I just don't think are going to really play well right now at this moment in time. It's hard to say that you stand with Israel, but you don't want to support Israel, and that was really the message that Vivek had that I think many will have a trouble with as you look at where we are with a world just kind of on edge right now.
Well said,
Jason, you push a button for me there. Autumn, you might get a zingers from me on this. I agree with you, by the way. My younger brother served very nobly America. He was in the Marines before and after 9/11, and then he did 5 tours as a contractor in Afghanistan and Iraq and other hot zones before he died back in 2012 when he was home, tragically. Not every soldier dies on the battlefield. And you got a soldier up there on the stage in Ron DeSantis when you're criticizing previous commanders in chief's decisions. That's okay, because I can disagree with them too. But you have a soldier who went over there while you're playing video games in a dorm room and put his life on the line and isn't aggrandizing that. Just says it for the record and keeps going, that he's aware and says, you know what, I wouldn't do this to other families. Man, was that heavy. I mean, I just want to let you guys know, as a brother of a soldier who was treated very poorly by the Veterans Administration in the United States of America, to hear what Ron DeSantis said as a soldier without having to badmouth people or destroy or tear our country down or the systems like I just did. I bring that out of me. Like I said, we got a bad experience, bad customer service after the wars. We had 70,000 soldiers have died by overdose and suicide since a war that took 2,300 of their lives. It started by a terrorist act that took 2,300 lives. We're losing more of our soldiers to mental health by a factor of 20, 30 times. And it seemed Ron DeSantis get that. And it seemed that some of the other candidates just wanted to spew statistics to try to persuade angry people and lose the human equation altogether. And I think that was devastating for the other candidates. And I think that showed very well for Ron DeSantis that he put it out there, but he didn't brag about it. He didn't have a lot of pride. He just put it out there.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Craig, for sharing that about your brother. And I agree with you on that. I think it was very powerful for Governor DeSantis to share that and then talk about what he'd done to get Americans, to get Floridians back from Israel. I thought that was a really compelling and emotionally powerful moment in the debate. So I think I agree with you on that. I want to touch on one more policy issue from the debate and then talk about, as we always do, the missing person on the stage. And that's the economy, because we know American families are hurting right now, from buying groceries to putting gas in the car, food on the table, all of that. And there was also some mention of Social Security as well, which of course is a big issue for America's seniors. How do you think the candidates handle the economy? And do you think that will be one of the main issues that voters are considering when they go to the polls in 2024? Jason?
Yeah, I think voters will certainly be looking at that issue as they head to the polls. I mean, every family is suffering under Bidenomics, right? And since the former president has left office, we're seeing now that it is an issue, and the economy is a struggle. It's costing 60% more in some cases for people to take out a mortgage today than it was a few years ago, and so that is obviously going to be a topic of conversation. Much like we've talked in other portions of this debate, I think that the two candidates that did the best on this issue were Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis. I appreciated the fact that they both were willing to go and to talk about that third rail that nobody wants to talk about, and that's Social Security. I think they handled it well, but it was reasonable. We are going to have to do something with Social Security. We cannot continue on the path that we're on. America is broke. America is having fiscal issues today, that the debt is just out of control, and we cannot sustain what we are doing. And so I am looking for a candidate who will not be afraid to go there, but will talk about the fact that we have to rein in spending and begin to address things like Social Security.
Yeah. Craig, what was your take?
Well, I really, this is one where Tim Scott corked a upper deck home run, just like I was complaining before about people treating people like a spreadsheet, when it's about wars and stuff like that. When it came to the Social Security and economics thing, I think a lot of the candidates listen, folks, we're the social conservatives. A human being is created in the image of God. I mean, it's a wonderful thing to just observe and to be in the privilege of being in the comfort of. 8 billion lives on this planet. And when it came to the retirement age, people were like, yeah, it's a math problem. And then you get to Tim Scott and he's like, whoa, wait, it ain't a math problem. His stump speech is, we came from picking cotton to Congress in one generation. So when you say someone's going to have to work until they're 70 to get their retirement, and all of the normal Republicans that assume, well, if you're a Republican, you're a member of a country club and you have an upper middle class home and you've paid off your mortgage by the time you're 50, right? And he's saying, no, in my family, it's hard to work an extra 3 years working the fields. And I thought that really is one of the reasons that if Tim Scott doesn't catch fire and become the nominee, which it's not looking like he will, this show is not created, by the way, to pick the nominee, folks. We're talking about where things are with our audience as it relates to social conservative issues. I love that Tim Scott was in there last night, because that's what the debate about economics and Social Security are, Republicans. It's not about what the bankers in Wall Street and their marketing agents will say. For this woman here, it will mean this, and this is how it'll sell in this focus group. It's good to have real Republicans like Tim Scott in there that are authentic, that can help guide that debate. So, I mean, I wish him well. I really like that they were all willing to have good, sober, open-minded discussions. They didn't take bait. They didn't make any just random platitudes, but Tim Scott separated himself with that answer, I think.
Yeah, I really enjoyed listening to that part of the debate, because I agree with you, Jason. I think any one of them would handle the economy and be better for American families than our current administration and where we're at. I spend about 2 times as much at the grocery store to feed my family as I did previously, so I get that. And I did think it was interesting, Governor DeSantis and Tim Scott clearly saying they wouldn't raise retirement age in terms of Social Security, whereas the others said they would, but wouldn't define what that age was. So I didn't have a winner or a loser in terms of economics and how do we deal with the Social Security issue, because you're right, Jason, it's one where it has to be dealt with, so we need somebody willing to take it on. But I thought, I agree, Craig, with you. All of their all of their responses were very substantive in nature. Let me turn to just one last question for you both. It's not on policy, so it's a little less substantive, but it's about, as we've talked about with each of these debates, sort of the missing elephant in the room, and that is former President Trump. Obviously, we all know he is still leading in the polls. It'll be interesting to see what happens in Iowa after the Iowa governor has endorsed Governor DeSantis. And Iowa, of course, being such a key state. But with Trump missing on the stage last night, and the feel of this debate was just a little bit different, do we think that hurt or helped Trump? Do you think that it's still very clear that he's missing? None of the candidates really, he barely got a mention last night, which is a little bit different. What was your take on that? Maybe Craig, and then we'll end with you, Jason.
Well, I'll start just by saying I think that Trump's campaign has been remarkably effective. He's had to spend almost no money on campaigning or time. I'm serious. Like, I'm a former politician myself. If you can design something that keeps you running the news cycles without it costing you hundreds of millions of dollars and flying around like he did the first time, and across the country every day, and he'd get home and sleep that night. It shows his prowess in developing business processes and things. And I do think that it's been very effective in showing the media that there's a market for them with advertising and everything else, just to keep it there. But I do think that human nature being what it is, he is going to get a look at some point, whether it's before or after he gets the nomination. And I think, and I'm not being a smart aleck when I say that, he is on a very strong pathway right now. We'll see what happens in Iowa and others. But I think the Americans, particularly social conservatives, we've been burnt too many times for too long to take people on faith. And I think even with incumbent presidents, people want to hear, former presidents, what they stand for, what they're going to do if they're in office for the next 4 years. I think it's been wise that he has avoided having to say that as long as possible, because America is a remarkably divided country and our globe is remarkably divided. But I think that as we're heading toward Thanksgiving now, that if he doesn't answer some of these questions, that voters will start moving elsewhere. It'll get really fluid really quickly. I've seen 40-point swings in Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina. I've been in this for 30 years. I helped the president go from less than 1% to becoming a nominee. It happens really quick. So I think he's done a very good job up till now. I think he will be tested. I'm not sure when. And we'll just have to see when that test occurs, how he reacts to it. But we all know his track record. He usually weathers those just fine as they come.
Jason, over to you.
Yeah, there's a reason why I think we've been using the phrase and referencing, President Trump as Teflon Don from time to time. I mean, nothing seems to stick to him. And he just has this innate sense of being able to sense where the electorate is at and to rise above a lot of the things that are occurring that would bring other candidates down. He can say things and do things in social media that he seems to just get a pass on, where any other candidate would really suffer a penalty for that. I mean, we've been talking in this conversation about Nikki Haley's use of the word scum, and yet Donald Trump can say so many other things and seem to get away with it. So I think it's interesting to watch that, and he knows that he's able to use that to his advantage. I do think there is some wisdom from his part in his campaign in not participating when there are so many candidates on the stage. But I hope that at some point we will see probably 3 candidates on the stage, and I hope one of them will be Donald Trump, because I would like to hear where he currently stands on the issues. We knew where he was when he was president 4 years ago. There's been a gap. And since that time has occurred, we've heard some different positions from him regarding socially conservative issues, things that I care about. I want to know what he thinks regarding transgender issues, and where does he stand on the definition of what is a woman? I want to know where he stands on this abortion conversation that we're having today. I want to see a president who will be able to use the bully pulpit to speak out on those issues and help lead toward a culture of life. I have not heard that from Mr. Trump this cycle. And I hope that he will find himself in a place where he's able to boldly answer those questions. And I hope the electorate will not reward him by giving him a pass until he begins to stake out a position on those issues.
Hey, I agree with you both. And Jason, I think that was very, very well said. I think for me personally, I would very much like to hear from President Trump on where he's at with abortion as well. I think that's critical because he has made some statements this cycle that are different from what he was saying when he was president. And I think it is fair to voters, especially to social conservatives, for him to come forward and clarify what that is, especially after the losses that we talked about on election night this year. How is the next president going to lead us forward and stake out that position of life that everyone matters, and that we all have to agree on that in order to move forward? And we haven't heard that from him at all yet. So I would welcome that as well. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. Jason and Craig, thank you for being on the SoCon Report this morning to break it down. It was a great conversation as always. We would love to hear from you and what your take was. I'm seeing lots of great comments coming in from the chat about who folks thought won last night. Please continue to keep that up or contact us online. We'd love to hear from you. If there's questions that you think these candidates should be answering or things that they haven't talked about that you would like to see them talk about, or that you'd like us to talk about on the next show where we talk about the debates and do a debrief on the debates, please send those in. We'd love to hear from you. If you live in New York, please connect with Jason and his group. I think we will put that in the chat for you to connect with them. New York families, we'd love for you to get connected with them. They are representing your values in the state of New York, which is, as we've talked about, not an easy thing to do. So they need your partnership, and we would encourage you to connect with them. If you don't live in New York, we've got 39 other state family policy councils, and we urge you to connect with them. You can do that on the Family Policy Alliance website, just familypolicyalliance.com. You can find your ally there, your state ally. If you don't have one, help us start one. And in the meantime, until the next debate, we encourage you to tune in with the SoCon Report weekly, and then also visit soconreport.com. It's your one-stop shop for social conservative news. Thank you all so much. Craig, Jason, thank you again, and have a great day.